History is full of ordinary things that suddenly become turning points. In these 8 stories, a cargo load, a classroom token, and a single unexpected passenger all change what happens next. A freighter went down with fruit in its hold. The ship was the Hippocampus, and that sounds impossible at first. The Hippocampus was carrying a routine shipment, not a special load. But a cargo hold has to stay balanced as the ship moves. At sea, that fruit cargo became the problem. Once the load shifted, the ship's stability changed, and the freighter was no longer steady. The result was a maritime accident that ended in sinking. A normal shipment had turned into a danger the crew could not simply unload away. What remains is a hold full of fruit and a ship under the surface. The cargo itself became the image of the loss. A child could be made to wear a Welsh knot around the neck for speaking Welsh in class. The Welsh knot was used in some classrooms as a punishment. Teachers handed it to a student who spoke Welsh, and the token stayed visible during the lesson. Its purpose was to discourage Welsh and push English in school. The object turned a spoken language into something a child carried like a mark. That made language pressure part of daily education. Every lesson could become a test of which language a child was allowed to use. For many children, the token was small, but the message was heavy. A little wooden piece could sit against a coat and follow a child back to the desk. A group of journalists did something unusual during a famine in Indonesia. They helped create a charity. They were already reporting on the crisis, watching food shortages strain families and local aid networks. Then the response shifted. The journalists joined efforts to establish a charity, turning headlines into organized help. That charity grew into one of Indonesia's largest, with donations, volunteers, and relief supplies moving through its offices. A newsroom response became an aid institution, and the story ends near a table of sacks, forms, and waiting hands. Rafael Polinario boarded a plane aiming for Spain, but the flight did not stay on that path. He was planning to defect, using the trip as his chance to leave Cuba behind. Then Fidel Castro's brother got on the plane, and that sudden presence changed the escape plan. Spain was no longer the safe destination, so Polinario defected to Canada instead. One passenger rerouted the whole trip, and the story ends with a new country on the ticket stub. An ambassador was asked to resign because of cancer. Ahmad Soedarsono did not step away. He held a diplomatic post where presence itself mattered. The request to leave came while he was facing cancer. His answer was direct. He said he wanted to die on duty, choosing service over resigning. That reply turned an illness into a test of commitment. The post was no longer just a job title. In the end, the line stayed with the office, the chair, and the signed papers. A diplomatic post became a final act of duty. A Chinese-Australian newspaper reached London, the Pacific Islands, and the Philippines. One paper crossed 3 distant regions. It was the Chinese-Australian Herald, a community publication carried far beyond its local readers. Ports and mail routes linked its pages to new shores. The key was distribution. Copies moved outward from Australia and arrived in London, the Pacific Islands, and the Philippines. That reach turned a local title into a transoceanic print network. Readers in different places could hold the same herald, so one community paper became a map of connected places. London, island ports, and Manila all met on its pages. Mosul was besieged in 1261 after its new ruler rejected a surrender his father had already accepted. His father had chosen settlement before him, leaving the city under a fragile peace. When the son took power, that agreement no longer held. By overturning the earlier surrender, he removed the settlement that had kept Mongol pressure in check. The broken arrangement turned negotiation into a new confrontation. In 1261, Mosul was drawn into siege. The city now faced Mongol pressure not from a new dispute, but from a reverse decision. A family decision became a citywide burden, carried by walls, gates, and waiting courtyards. The ruler's choice now sat on Mosul's stone threshold. One costume designer worked on Shirley Temple's look again and again. Gwen Wakeling was behind 14 of her films. Temple was a major child star, and movie studios built her image with every detail. Clothes, collars, and hems all sat inside that plan.
Wakeling's role was repeated, not random.
By designing costumes for 14 films, she helped define Temple's on-screen image. That kind of repetition mattered on camera. Audiences met a familiar screen figure, built from fabric as much as performance, so a dress rack became part of film history. In Hollywood, a costume designer could help turn one child actor into a recognizable image. That is the strange part of history, the smallest detail can redirect everything. If you want more stories like these, subscribe and tell us which one surprised you most.